Welcome to the Old Capital Real Estate Investing Podcast with Michael Becker and Paul Peebles. During this program, you will hear interviews with real-life successful investors who will share their stories and provide useful advice on how to acquire, finance, and operate apartment complexes. Now, here they are, Michael Becker and Paul Peebles.
Welcome to the Old Capital Real Estate Investing Podcast. I'm your host, Paul Peebles, National Underwriter for Old Capital, and typically joining me, the man himself, the governor, the mayor of Beckerville, the man himself, Mr. Michael Becker. Unfortunately, he's on another due diligence assignment. So sitting in the podcast, the professor, James Eng. James, how are you?
Great. Thanks for having me, Paul.
What is going on in the Old Capital world these days?
You know, a couple things. I think first, our big conference is coming up October 24th and 25th here in Dallas. So if you have not gotten your ticket for that, go over to oldcapitalpodcast.com and get your ticket for that. We're going to have probably 600-700 of our friends here for our big annual event. So check that out. And yeah, that's the biggest event coming up.
That's fantastic. What's going on in lending these days?
I mean, lending right now, got a handful of Fannie Mae loans going right now. And as you know, Fannie Mae loans float until you lock the rate. And so I keep getting calls about, 10-year treasury going lower and lower and lower. And got a text last night about 8 o'clock saying that I'm in a relationship with a new girl. Her name is the 10-year treasury. I just keep looking at her and, it's 10-year treasury's gone down 30, 40 basis points since the beginning of the year. And so that has materially impacted leverage on a lot of Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac transactions. And so deals that really didn't make sense November, December of last year are starting to make a lot of sense right now in terms of the leverage you can get.
So leverage used to be with the 10-year treasury higher by 40 or 50 basis points. It used to be up at,
70%, 65-70%.
71%. Yeah. And now they're getting closer to, what's the number today?
75 to 80%, depending on the deal and the cash flow on the existing property.
So an absolute beautiful girlfriend to keep looking at all the time, Ms. 10-year treasury, the pinup of the month.
Pinup of the month. What's funny is you really have no idea what she's ever going to do, unfortunately.
She could also be the bad girlfriend, the horror, the one that you don't bring home to mother. So that's funny. That's a good point. So in the podcast, we have some friends of ours that we've known for a long period of time, and we want to kind of introduce you to their story because I think it's a unique story that they got into multifamily, kind of the ways around through single family business. They did a little single family business. She is a single family real estate person too. But before that, that's I think where the interesting part is of what they did for a living before they got into multifamily, and they quit their jobs and now they're doing multifamily full time. And so that's kind of the beauty of investing, is that you get to have options of what you want to do with your life and your career and your family and your fun. So that's some of the things that we're going to talk about today. So in the podcast today, we have Emily Courtright and Adam Roberts. Adam Roberts, how are you guys?
Great. How are you, Paul?
Well.
So Adam is a Big Ten kind of guy, and Emily is kind of a Big Ten kind of gal. So he went to Penn State. Is that right?
That's right. Pennsylvania State University.
And then she went to, let me see if I can say this correctly, The Ohio State University.
You got it right, Paul. Thanks.
So The Ohio State University so they're Big Ten people. I went to the University of Iowa. It's always good to have a little chat around and talk a little bit about the competition. So we're going to talk a little bit about your journey, and we want to kick it off with James. And so, James, let's get it going.
Yeah. So, Emily or Adam, maybe you can give us a little introduction, sort of your background, and then also sort of how you transitioned from corporate careers. So, you both grew up sort of at GE like me, corporate careers to multifamily. So, if you want to you start and just give us a little bit about yourself, that'd be great.
Thanks, James. I'll go ahead and start. My name is Emily Courtright, and I'm originally from Cincinnati, Ohio. I got my bachelor's and master's in industrial engineering from The Ohio State University. And after that, I got a great job with GE Aviation. They moved me around the country a few times. I worked in some different roles in quality, supply chain, but landed in Southern California working at a manufacturing facility that made military landing gear and fuel tanks. So I was the production supervisor, first for the assembly line and the paint department for mostly Black Hawk helicopter landing gear. And then I became the production supervisor for the entire production line for F-18 fuel tanks, which included welding, sheet metal forming, assembly, paint. And those roles really helped give me a great operations background and be able to see the whole picture. So I was managing production output as well as safety, cost, quality, and the people.
Wow.
And then transition over to Adam, maybe a little about your background would be great.
Yep. So I was raised in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania, the great Northeast. Also moved around the country quite a bit with General Electric, their aerospace division, as well as their locomotive division. And like Emily, I ended up in Southern California managing a facility that produced jet engine hardware. And much like Emily, I had roles in quality, production, plant management, where we managed people around safety, quality, and hitting production targets. So setting expectations, meeting expectations, and, womb to tomb type projects within the operation space.
So wait a second. So you worked for GE Capital or GE?
Yeah, GE. Mhm.
Emily worked for GE. James worked for GE. Are any of those divisions still tied to GE?
Actually, the aviation division still is. However, the division of aviation that we were in California, GE divested, which kind of runs into our story with real estate, because Emily and I were more or less on the street looking for jobs at that point in our lives.
So take me back to, and we have a lot of investors on our podcast, and a lot of times they are just partners, sort of not in a relationship, but did you guys actually meet in, or maybe tell that story a little bit just to give the context?
We met at a fondue party.
It was, through GE friends.
Okay.
We had some mutual friends at GE, but we met at a fondue party that one of our friends hosted. And
was this in California or
this was in Cincinnati?
This was in Cincinnati.
Okay.
We were both working at headquarters for GE Aviation.
Okay.
And it was a fondue party, and Emily and I got to talking about flying because she has some pilot friends that she would fly with on the weekends in Ohio. And I happened to be a pilot. And so the conversation just kind of went from, hey, nice to meet you, to, do you want to go flying sometime?
Okay. All right. Awesome. And then,
Boy, you are smooth.
That's right.
So how did you get from California to Texas?
So we were both working for GE in Southern California. It was a division, like Emily mentioned, landing gear, fuel tanks. GE's aerospace division is primarily set around jet engine technology. So landing gear, fuel tanks don't fit that core technology. GE moved us out to California on kind of a hope and a promise of career advancement. Said, hey, this is a great career move for you. We're going to let you kind of season your career out there, take tough roles, and then we'll move you back to headquarters and get you into executive level roles, typical corporate ladder thing. Well, a couple years into that promise, GE announced that they were selling the division in California, along with the human capital, like Emily and myself. And so we were pretty much devastated. We made phone calls back to headquarters, and it was more or less, Emily who? Right. Adam who?
Yeah.
Whereas a year before it was, oh, you guys are the next cream of the crop, top talent. So at that point, it was option time. And we had went to a real estate seminar, kind of really good timing, hosted by the Rich Dad program in Anaheim, California. And I drug Emily to it. And as she recalls the story, she thought it was stock market investing. I said, no, this is real estate investing. And the reason I became interested in that one weekend event was every year since I was maybe 15 or 16, my father would put together a budget spreadsheet for me and my sister. Wow. And it had your normal income, expenses, investments, just year by year, watch your nest egg grow. And he would always put every year a rental property in as a line item. And it would, $2,000-$3,000 a year. But over time, over 10 years, you've got 10 rental properties and it looks great. So that's what kind of got my brain going in the direction of real estate. So we go to this weekend seminar hosted by Rich Dad. Next week, we announced that we're getting dumped by GE.
Right.
And the weekend after that, we go shopping for duplexes in Southern California.
Oh, wow. Okay.
And we looked at a duplex. It was $600,000. Wow. It wouldn't cash flow. We were going to have to live in Fullerton away from the beach. And it wasn't the right deal for us. So we passed on it and kept kind of looking, but both working full time. We didn't get very far. When we found out that we were going to be relocating to Texas, Adam landed a job in Fort Worth. We looked at each other and said, well, if we want to get into real estate investing, what better time than now?
So what year was this?
This was 2012.
Okay.
And during the Rich Dad class in California, they kept saying, the Texas market is so hot. The instructor just kept referencing how strong the Texas market was. And we're like, well, we're moving to Texas. If for some reason it doesn't work out, there's so many employment opportunities. I could always go back and get an engineering job, a manufacturing job. So we decided that when we left California, I would leave GE and I wouldn't get another job in Texas. I would start our real estate investing business. So as soon as we got to Texas, I got my real estate license. It was about 2 months later that we bought our first fourplex. Then we got our first flip property. Then we got our first rental, and it really just snowballed from there. So over the next 4 to 5 years, we did about 25 flips. And then we were up to, at the most, we had our fourplex and 8 single family rentals that we self-managed. And so obviously I never went back to corporate, and I just continued building the real estate business. But it got to the point that it wasn't bringing in the cash flow fast enough that we wanted to be able to have Adam join me full time. The goal was always to have Adam leave corporate eventually. We just didn't know how long that was going to take.
So was it the cash flow number? Was it the number of units that you said, all right, we've done enough single family, now we want to move into multifamily? Maybe tell us about that.
Yeah, so about 2017 timeframe, the start of 2017, we knew that single family homes in North Texas were becoming more and more expensive. It was tough to get them to cash flow because you're competing with, families who want to be owner occupants in these houses, though they were paying top dollar. We still had a good number of flips going on per year, but we just knew that we needed to get more sophisticated. We had the capital to do so. And so we started trying some different things. We made an offer on a mobile home park in Fort Worth. We made an offer on a retail strip mall in North Richland Hills. We just started trying these things and taking the approach that we learned in single family, which is try things and fall down, learn, get back up, and didn't have much success until Emily came to me one day saying that she heard about an apartment investing seminar in July of 2017, hosted by Brad Sumrock. And we knew the name because we had a colleague in the single family world that had joined the program and has had some success in apartments. So with an open mind, just like we did in California, we went there on that weekend. The one difference in the California single family weekend event, we left knowing that we could do it and knowing that we wanted to explore it. With the apartment multifamily event in 2017, it was a sure bet. We knew it was the next step for us. We also knew that we couldn't do it the same way we did single family, where try things, fail, get back up, try again. We needed to have a more sophisticated network, a mentor, and the like.
So that was, summer 2017. And then talk about that next 9 months until closing your first deal. What did that look like?
Originally, when we joined, we knew from seeing other people's success stories that one of the quickest ways to get your first deal was to identify a co-sponsor. And that was something that was one of the first initiatives for us. So we identified some of the more advanced investors in the group and started setting up phone calls with them. And one in particular, when we met with Aaron Katz, the conversation was just really natural. It felt great. There was definitely a chemistry there. And the phone call turned into a lunch date, which turned into a dinner date with him and his wife, which just turned into really getting to know him and his wife and building a relationship. And at that point, Aaron agreed to work with us, to be a co-sponsor and kind of be that resume and the fundraising side of the team.
Okay.
So from the beginning, we were putting in offers with Aaron as our partner, as our co-sponsor. But it definitely took time. It took about 8 months before we got Cooper Park. And we had analyzed, probably underwritten in the spreadsheet, about 40 to 45 deals. We had gone to see 10 of them. We had made offers on 4 and we got 1. So there really was a funnel of effort, and we looked at almost anything that came on the market. But by the time we got to about 8 months in, we finally won Cooper Park. And that ended up being our first deal.
And the partnership with Aaron was really a win-win when you think about it. From the get-go, our elevator pitch to the more experienced investors was, here's a couple of real estate investors, and here's our track record to date. We're willing to put in the effort, the legwork, the sweat equity. We have the money for the earnest money deposit. We have, we're willing to learn anything and everything to get into this business. And then, the win for the other side of the coin for the co-sponsor is getting to mentor a couple of new folks, watch them grow, as well as, financially be part of the deal. So it was really a true win-win for both parts of the equation.
So I'm going to steal this question from Paul. Paint us a picture of Cooper Park, and why did you like Cooper Park?
When we first drove into Cooper Park, it was one of those properties where you look around and you're like, I love it. I would be so proud to own this property. And that's kind of the mentality and the feeling that we had during that very first visit. It was owned and self-managed by a local couple who is very well known in the real estate circles. They're very high integrity. They have perfect books. And so we felt really comfortable with the sellers and their honesty and their practices. It was also a very low density property for being in the middle of Arlington, Texas. It was spread out. There were green spaces. There were mature trees. It didn't really feel like you were in between these buildings and being like swamped by concrete. There was so much green space, and there was also some meat on the bone. The rents were lower than market. There was opportunity to raise them. There was opportunity to implement higher end finishes, premium units, just like the comparables were doing in the neighborhood. So from that very first visit, we knew it was a property that we were going to be proud to own, and we knew it was one that we were going to go hard for and wanted to get this one under contract.
So this was back in summer of 18. Do you remember how many offers they had on the property? It was a listed deal.
Yeah, it was in the neighborhood of 20 offers or so.
Okay, 20 offers, probably 5 to 10 people in best and final. Yeah. How did you guys separate yourself in that best and final?
I think price and terms are always a big piece of it. However, I have to really go back to the strength of the team. Emily and I knew that we wanted to move quickly and smartly in this business. So the first priority was to identify someone that we could partner with that would differentiate our offer. Sure. Again, price and terms typically speak the loudest. However, when you have some offers that could be within tens of thousands of dollars on multi-million-dollar offers, the people who are known to close and create a smooth transaction, I think make their way to the top of the resume pile. So I have to go back to our partnership with Aaron and the team members that we work with to help the transaction go smooth, like Old Capital. When the offers are put on the seller's desk, the team that you work with and the people that are in part of the general partnership group, I think, speak loudly.
Paul, did we do that loan on that property?
Yeah, we did the loan for the seller.
The seller on the property.
Yeah.
So we knew the seller pretty well. And then the listing brokers we have a great relationship with. Do you remember, so going back to once you guys got the deal under contract, you have 60 days essentially to close. Do you remember anything that came up during that due diligence period, or was it pretty clean in terms of getting the loan, raising equity, anything that you remember from that period?
I would say it was pretty clean. Okay. We budgeted for some lender required repairs that we thought had potential to come up and that didn't. So we ended up having some buffer in our CapEx budget that we were able to reallocate to other places. And with the capital raise, we raised $5.6 million in about 2 weeks. Okay. So that went really smooth. And I would say our webinar in general, our pitch to the potential investors, went to plan.
Yeah, I think the only interesting thing that happened during due diligence was, and I've had to laugh with Emily because we seemed to get really close on best and finals in the spring storm season for Texas. For those who aren't in North Texas or Texas in general, there's a hailstorm every 15 minutes in the springtime. And so we were 2 days before closing on Cooper Park when a massive hailstorm went through North Texas. And I'm looking through all the different weather reporting apps and trying to see the hail. And sure enough, hail went through Arlington, and I'm calling Trey Caldwell, the listing broker, saying, listen, don't freak out, but I'm going to drive down to the property and put my eyes on the roof. Don't freak out. And that's just, me and my, at the time, relative inexperience speaking, saying, I need to go see it for myself. Right. So I thought that was kind of funny. It jumped up.
So in Cooper Park, you guys acquired the property. Tell me how many doors that was. And then it's been about a year now. Any surprises or lessons learned in the last year as you go through sort of your rehab and taking over the property?
Yeah, so it's 180 units in Arlington, Texas. C+ property, C+ B-. And as Emily mentioned earlier, the meat on the bone was really the rents. Most units were 200 $250 a month under market. And I'd say, not a huge surprise because we do plan for it financially. But a good learning experience for us was, when you go to these real estate events and these lunch and learns and you listen to webinars, it's all about the net operating income. Everybody gets very excited about raising the rents and getting your net operating income up to, market and beyond. What happens in the background in reality is really not so pretty, right? Evictions, tenants who say they're going to pay and don't. And, you sit down and it's funny because through the past year, we've been doing very well at Cooper Park and we've been bringing rents up to market, but it hasn't been without its challenges from a tenant perspective. And I sit with Emily and we talk about it. And I'm like, it makes sense. If someone came to me and said my mortgage was just going up by $300 tomorrow, that'd be a huge financial surprise. And some of these folks in the apartments, they go paycheck to paycheck. And so $200 is actually a lot of money.
Yeah. And I mean, average rent on the property when you took it over was
$600 to $700 a month.
$600 to $700 a year. So it's a 30-40% increase on the rent. Okay. So I guess, knowing what you know now about the property, about running a property for a year, is there anything you would have changed on the acquisition piece or beforehand that you could have done differently? Anything like that?
Yeah. During the transition, we kind of let it ride out for a couple months and let it see how the financials went, kind of let it level out. And looking back, we were consistently not bringing in the income that we thought we were going to. For example, every tenant was paying $10 a month for carport. Well, we're all of a sudden, we're 2-3 months in and we're not bringing in $10 a month in carport. So we had to audit the rent roll and the charges. And we found that some of the charges didn't get transferred over properly. Okay. And that all of a sudden we've got 40, 50 tenants that aren't getting charged carports. And we've got other tenants that aren't getting charged the trash fee. And so there was definitely some auditing that had to be done when it came to the transition of the rent roll to make sure that all the charges were being properly applied. So that was a big lesson learned. And that's something that we're going to do earlier this time. And on the expense side, the electricity was another lesson learned where we would audit the electricity a few months in and we would find that we were paying for some of the units electricity when the tenants are supposed to pay their own electricity. So when it's $80 to $100 a month, there's somebody living in the unit and the tenants are supposed to pay their own bill. So there was definitely some auditing that had to be done on specific pieces of the P&L.
Was your operations part of the brain just like going crazy now, just finding all these little things? I mean, I feel like apartment business, it's sort of like, cut by cut, like the cut by 1,000, whatever the
death by 1,000 cuts.
Death by 1,000 cuts. Sometimes like some of these owners who are not as hands-on, they're just missing a lot of these things. Oh,
totally, yeah. And I think what's interesting to watch is, Wayner Multifamily, who we partner with on our properties, they have some really good processes in place. So, when you talk about the operations aspect, the first thing that Emily and I think of is what we did back in corporate is, okay, well, there's an issue. What's the corrective action and what's the time frame to get that fixed? Action owner timing. And that's basically how we lived for the first 10 years of our career. With apartments, it's a bigger animal. It's definitely a lot of moving pieces. So our approach to these kind of situations is start building relationships with the people that work for you, and they will feel empowered to do the right thing, to get the auditing done on time, to make sure that the tenants feel like it's a safe place to live and good value for the rent they pay. And again, it's not to say things don't come up. When we found some of these P&L issues, we had to go to the property multiple times a week, check in, make sure people are looking at the books properly so that, in the end, our investors are seeing the return that they expect.
So you guys closed that deal sort of June 2018. At what point did you say, all right, I feel this deal is a stable deal. We've taken over the property. It's running well. Now we have the time and resources to really look at our next deal.
From a financial standpoint, I really wanted to see 2 distributions come through to the passive investor group because to me, I spent a lot of time in corporate looking at P&Ls and understanding how manufacturing operations ran. With our single family business, of course, it's more mom and pop. It's 1 house, 2 house, 3 house. But with apartments, again, it's a living thing. So for me, I wanted to see several months come in, make some distributions to the investors, see that life cycle of tenant pays rent. we pay expenses, and then we give, net operating income to our investors before we would do a deep dive on acquisitions. So I would say it was in the November timeframe. We made a second distribution and said, hey, let's get back into the market.
Talking about distributions, you make distributions to limited partners. How many limited partners did you have in this one?
We had 56.
56 limited partners. And what was the minimum equity raise?
The minimum was $75,000.
And you guys raised about $3.5-4 million bucks?
5.6.
5. And how long did it take you to raise 5.6?
About 2 weeks.
About 2 weeks. That's pretty good. At that period of time last year, what were equity investors wanting for a rate of return on their money?
I would say they were looking for a minimum of about 8% cash flow year over year, or average annualized cash flow, and minimum of 70% total return, preferably 80% or higher total return over 5 years. And
did you guys use like a revision cap rate in that deal too?
We did. We used a reversion cap rate of 7%.
What does that mean, James, when I talk about that?
Yes, I mean, people are buying deals anywhere from 5 to 6% caps today. And so when you go to sell the property, let's say 5 years from now, you're going to take your NOI in year 5 and cap that at a certain cap rate that you feel is adequate for the risk that you're going to take over the next 5 years. So most people will add about 50 basis points. Some people will add 75 to 100 basis points over today's cap rate to account for that risk. And so that's going to essentially predict your sales price when you go to sell in year 5.
So that's something that investors are taking a look at, just making sure that everything is not flowers and roses and butterflies, that there could be a scenario that cap rates are going to expand. And, we're trying to increase rents during that period of time. But we're kind of stressing the deal out, making sure that it does make sense when we go to sell the property. And you guys did it the correct way by having this reversion cap rate.
So November of last year, you really decided, all right, let's start going out there looking for deals. Let's get into maybe your second deal. Tell us how you found that one and sort of the size on that one.
So yeah, we got back into the marketplace and, just putting our process to work. When a deal comes on the market, if it fits our criteria, which is an interesting discussion point in itself, because now that we have some experience, we felt like we could open up our criteria a bit. We've spent a couple years now meeting with investors and building our credibility. And so for us, it was anything between 100 and 150 units we felt very comfortable with. And so we would look at those properties, underwrite them, go on property tours, and make offers. The interesting thing about the deal that we eventually landed in North Haven Terrace is probably around the January timeframe after the holidays, we looked at each other and said, you know what? We might be limiting ourselves by just looking at deals between 100 and 150 units. But a deal any bigger than that, we would probably partner with somebody for the equity raise and that. So we started looking at bigger deals. North Haven was one of those, 208 units in Dallas. And the interesting part of the North Haven story is we, again, working broker relationships and, telling the listing broker, hey, we're serious about this. We're going to make a serious offer and we expect to get some feedback, making it a best and final, but with the caveat that, hey, we're probably going to partner with somebody when we get there. Sure. And that's what happened. We made it to the seller interview portion of North Haven, probably about 3 to 4 other groups in the best and final at that point. And we called our partner, Aaron Katz, and said, hey, Aaron, assuming you're not also competing on this deal, we've made it very far in the process, and we'd like to know if you'd like to partner with us again to get the deal, essentially to land the deal.
Right. So a lot of people make a lot of offers. So I think on this deal, there's probably 10, 15 offers on the deal. They invite you to the best and final. You put in your best and final, and then you're like, all right, I think I'm done now. Then they say, all right, actually the seller wants to talk to you. And I guess give us a little feedback. Like, what are they asking you? And like, how do you respond to something like that?
The seller was very direct. He didn't want to hear any of the fluff, any of the background. He wanted to know how we were going to raise the money, how we know that we're going to close the property. And it was I would say there was definitely some pressure on the phone. He had asked us when the last time we raised $6 million was. And we said, well, about a year ago for Cooper Park, we raised 5.6. And he said, well, what about before that? And we kind of just paused because we hadn't done anything before that.
This is where teamwork comes in, what I spoke about earlier.
Right. And at that point, we knew that Aaron was going to partner with us, and James was on the seller interview with us, and so was the listing broker. And both of them had very good relationships with Aaron, had done a lot of transactions. So we were able to utilize Aaron's track record of raising money and his ability to close with the listing broker. He had recently just closed a transaction with them. So at that point, we pulled in the resume and the track record from Aaron to help us out during the seller interview.
Yeah, and during the call, again, James was on the phone call with us. And when the seller asked us, well, what about before the Cooper Park experience? Emily and I looked at each other, because when you're going through these interviews, you feel like every word coming out of your mouth is the most important thing you've ever said in your life. And James piped right up. I heard him come off mute. He says, well, actually, this buyer group has done it in the past on these 6 deals, and here were the amounts, and here's the loans they got. And so it was, again, teamwork helping to eventually land a deal.
What do you remember of that call, James?
Just another call from me. No, just
We were
that day.
Yeah. No, I mean, what's important on those calls is we are on a lot of those calls, and we sort of know. I mean, most sellers are very direct. They don't have time for any BS. They're sort of like, debt, equity, can you pay me more? That's the 3 questions. And for me, when I'm getting ready for that call, I have their resume ready. I have any sponsors that they have. I have their resume ready, and we've done those transactions, so we're very familiar with them. This deal was in Dallas. We've raised money 4 deals in Dallas. So I articulated the properties, the size, the units, the equity amounts, the loan amounts. And most people are actually not very good on these calls. And so when you're able to do that, that gives the seller a comfort level with you as the equity and us as the debt. And to them, they're ready to go if you're able to meet the terms.
Yeah, without a question, you definitely want to have your banker and your other co-sponsor on that call just to do it. But definitely have your banker, because the banker has done it 5 times this week. You've done it 1 or 2 times this year. So the banker brings a lot more to the table and kind of understands what the flow of the conversation is. Will step into a different role to be kind of a promoter of you, and then making sure that you try to get it. So I think some great words of wisdom on that.
So that property just closed this month, essentially. Mm-hmm. It's only been 2 weeks. Is there anything that you're taking from Cooper Park and sort of implementing on this takeover transition? Any surprises? I guess it's been pretty early, but any surprises so far?
Yeah, I think, just getting back to the human element, we want to make sure the folks that are working at the property feel part of the greater team. A lot of things that Emily and I learned working at GE, quite frankly, almost kind of take it for granted, is people leadership. People who go and work at the property every day as a job, they want to feel like they're contributing. And that brings the biggest return to them besides their paycheck, obviously. So we've been doing a lot of that early on. We've got the on-site manager at North Haven worked for the sellers. So we've been able to retain on-site management. Okay. I want to make sure that she feels comfortable working with Wayner Multifamily, and with the new tools, the new processes, make sure that she knows who Emily and I are in case she needs support. And so we've been doing a lot of the soft, people skills things as we get going here.
So talking about people, I mean, you guys are currently engaged?
Yes.
Correct? Okay. And so how is it working together on multifamily? Because I think it's pretty unique. Like when you go to a lot of events, you'll see couples, married couples, you'll see partnerships, and that dynamic. How do you guys sort of do real estate, but then also try to be normal people at the same time?
There are definitely some challenges to working together. And I think a lot of them come from, there's been so many new experiences. And new experiences can be frustrating because a situation will come up and I want to react one way and he reacts another way, and we don't know the right answer. We don't know what the best way to tackle this is. And we can consult our peers. We can kind of talk it through, but there has been some butting heads. But in the end, even though there are the challenges, it's also so rewarding to be able to see us reach our goals together. And we're really setting ourselves up for financial freedom in the future, and to be able to go through that together and looking back and say, we achieved these goals and we did it by working together. It's hard to imagine what we're going to achieve in the next 5 to 10 years.
Sure.
So that's the rewarding part about it, but there are definitely challenges and butting heads and talking things through.
Adam, Emily's always right.
Yes, and I just nod my head. That's correct.
I was gonna ask how you guys split roles, but I guess I got it right there.
After 25 years of marriage, that's the way it works. Let me tell you that.
So actually, when we split up roles, we brainstormed all the different aspects and the tasks associated with multifamily, single family, our whole business, and we divvied them up. And each one we assigned to one person. So I ended up taking, because of the managing the flips and the single family, I take the construction side, the CapEx, the lender reimbursements that have to do with the CapEx spending. And I also enjoy writing. So I do the investor emails, the monthly emails
updates,
or
sure.
biweekly emails when we first get started. And then Adam's strengths are with operations. He is the one setting up the meetings with the regional manager, reviewing the financials. He makes his special spreadsheets that tell us where we're at according to budget. So we broke it up by strengths and what we each want to do.
So Paul, I'm pretty organized, but typically when we send out a due diligence spreadsheet to a borrower, there's, let's call it 40 items on there. Mm-hmm. And on both deals, I think Emily took the list and essentially put every item in a box or folder and sent it directly back to the lender in the exact same order. And I was like, even the loan underwriter was very impressed.
Well, that's what you have with guys that know how to use Excel.
Yes.
Right.
In our engineers, and that they have that mindset. So that doesn't surprise me about you two. That doesn't surprise me.
Yes, I think the organization piece is huge. Is there anything else that you've sort of taken from your past career and brought it into multifamily? Any other tips that you would have for people?
I think there's a lot of operational strengths. You know, again, when something goes wrong, who owns it? What's the timing? When's it going to get fixed? The expectation is definitely there. But on the other, on the other side of the coin, it's a human business. There's a human element. There are real people running these properties. There's real people living at these properties. When I think back to corporate world, Emily and I learned a lot of people leadership and how to make sure people feel as though they're contributing and being rewarded for their accomplishments. And from our single family experiences, how do you deal with tenants? I think going through a single family experience and owning rental properties can kind of be a drag because you get the phone calls and you have to release the units and your weekends are spent showing the house. But at the end of the day, now Emily and I know what our management company is going through when we have evictions or when we have, huge maintenance issues and people leaving reviews on Google saying things about, so we know that there's expectations, but at the same time, it's a people business, both from the tenant aspect and the management aspect. And we haven't necessarily been on boots on the ground, like running a 200 unit apartment complex day by day by day, but we've done it with single family and it's essentially the same concept.
Yeah. And I think a lot of times in corporate roles, you sort of have like your little pie that you're responsible for. But now when you guys are general partners, it's all yours.
It's all.
There's no one else. You have full ownership of the deal and everyone's coming to you to come up with answers.
Oh yeah. And I gave Emily the kind of the synonymous in GE, you had these manufacturing plants and the people that worked on the shop floor were hourly wage earners. Right. They worked for the plant manager. And the plant manager reported to a general manager, and the general manager owned multiple sites.
Sure.
It's almost like we've gotten to the general manager position because now as you acquire multiple apartment complexes, you've got a regional manager that is the day-to-day, sure. And then they manage the people who are actually working at the property. So yeah, to your point, it's the buck stops here from an expectation standpoint.
So any interesting stories, or it can be about multifamily or even you guys have some interesting hobbies. If you want to share anything with that before we wrap up here, that'd be great.
I want to hear about not so much the hobbies. I want to hear that too. But any funny stories when you're talking about properties?
we were touring a property with Paul one day, and we were really excited about it. It was looking to be a great property. They had a bunch of efficiency units, and we're walking around and we're touring this property, and Paul's just kind of, walking behind us, and he's like, "This is the efficiency unit?" And then the lady giving the tour was like, "Yeah, this is the efficiency." And we walk in, and it's literally a bedroom, one big bedroom and a bathroom. It didn't have a kitchen. It had a little gas camping stove.
A hot plate or a camping stove.
Yeah, which is definitely not a good idea. And he kind of looks at us and says, like, "This isn't a real efficiency. This does not qualify." So we're kind of, our hopes have been burst at this point. Paul goes and gets on the phone to confirm.
Yeah, he called like 2 or 3 lenders just to see if we could even get a loan on this property.
So, and it turns out that without a true kitchen, it's not technically a true efficiency apartment. Right. And so that was a big lesson learned for us, and we will definitely remember that and always look for kitchens and efficiencies.
So the property was probably built in the late 60s, early 70s or so. And so the previous owner, whether it was legal or illegal, had taken some of the 2 bedrooms and broken the 2 bedrooms. And the 1 bedroom, the 2 bedrooms, one of the sides had a kitchen, full, it looked like a regular apartment building. They split that 2 bedroom into a 1 bedroom, and then one of the bedrooms, they made it into an efficiency. And just like Emily and Adam said, is that it had a hot plate and a little small refrigerator. And on the rent roll, it showed as a unit, but truly it was not an efficiency. It was just like a glorified motel room. And so we can't lend on something like that unless they put a stove in or a real refrigerator and a sink into the unit. I mean, Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac and the banks are not going to allow that to happen on that type of stuff. So that's just after walking 5,000 doors or 5,000 apartment buildings and 5,000 days of doing this, is that you see things that you can and can't do on some of these properties.
You never know what you're going to see.
You never know.
That's why you got to walk units. Emily and Adam, is there anything else that you would want our audience to know? And if you could wrap up maybe just with your number one piece of advice for maybe new investors starting into the space.
Yeah, I mean, I think the one thing we'd like to tell folks is we look forward to meeting new investors. It's very important for us to continue our journey and build our network. And at the end of the day, we've been doing this now, and we really, really enjoy the space. So when we do talk to folks who are looking to get into it as passive limited partners and put their money to work, we like to, teach them about how to get going, what to look for. We try to direct them to the right channels for their education, because obviously education is very important. You want to know what you're investing in and how the asset works. And, I would say from an advice standpoint, if you're out doing deals and looking to get a deal under contract, in this market environment, first of all, a lot of the learning takes place while you're making offers. You can get educated. You can go to seminars every weekend. You can, tweak your spreadsheet on Sunday morning. But actually making an offer, getting into best and final, or maybe not even making it to best and final, but getting feedback from a broker. Hey, where am I weak? Where did I not meet the seller's expectations? It's gold. It's the best feedback you can receive. And so for folks who haven't made offers yet, go out and make offers. Get in the marketplace. People who are getting really close just need to get creative about your business plan,
And I would say my advice, which we've followed, is it comes into the education. And from reading Rich Dad Poor Dad, there's a line in there that Robert Kiyosaki says that back in the 1970s, he spent $380 on a class, on a 3-day real estate class, and it ended up making him over $2 million plus way more. And that's how I feel about the classes that we've taken. We spent $100 on a single family 3-day course that changed our lives in 2012. And then we spent $200 on a 2-day multifamily education class that has changed our lives again. So it doesn't cost a lot to get the education and to really light that fire inside of you, to know that there are opportunities out there for you to grow and build this future for yourself that you maybe never thought you could have.
Absolutely. Completely agree. What is the best way for people to reach out to learn more about you guys?
So you can go to our website, is aemultifamily.com. And folks who go to the website and reach out to us that way, we get back to you personally. And we typically what we'll do is we'll set up a phone call to get to know you and understand what your goals are and, start building a relationship, because apartment investing is a relationship business. And then my email is Adam, ADAM, at aehomebuyers.com.
And mine is Emily, EMILY, Courtright, CORTRIGHT at KW.com.
We'll put that in the show notes.
Yeah.
Fantastic. Well, thanks for sharing your story with us. I mean, I always enjoy the stepping stones to success and kind of understanding a little bit more about how people do it. I think that you guys have done a great job putting these two properties together, one property being 180 doors right out of the box. That's pretty damn good. So we kind of learned how you did that, and then making the second transaction 208 doors. So you guys are doing great. So we're happy that you're doing so well, and we're certainly proud of you too. So we appreciate
Thanks,
that.
Paul.
So again, that was Adam and Emily. James, anything else?
That's it. Thanks a lot.
All right. That was James Zhang. I'm Paul Peebles. Have a good day.
Thanks for listening to the Old Capital Real Estate Investing Podcast. Please join us at oldcapitalpodcast.com to sign up for our weekly email updates. We'll see you next week for another great interview.